It was just another ordinary day on Earth. People went about their daily routines, oblivious to the danger that was about to unfold. The sun rose, shining on cities, forests, and oceans. But deep in space, something was stirring. Something that no one could have predicted. A strange signal, unlike anything humanity had ever heard before, began to broadcast across the entire world. It came from the vast emptiness of space, piercing the peaceful hum of life on Earth. At first, it was subtle, a faint disturbance in the airwaves. Scientists at research stations around the world noticed it first. A few radio stations, particularly in isolated areas, picked up odd frequencies. They couldn't make sense of it, but the signals were undeniably there. They appeared to be coming from a place deep in the galaxy, a part of space where no human-made signal had ever traveled. Something alien was out there. As the hours passed, the signal grew stronger. It was as if the message was being deliberately broadcasted with increasing power. Scientists, engineers, and communication experts rushed to analyze it. But no one could understand the strange pattern of sounds and pulses. The signals were unlike anything on Earth. By mid-afternoon, the signal had spread to every corner of the planet. It was impossible to ignore. Radios, televisions, and even mobile phones picked it up. The world's leading experts gathered to decode the strange message. There was a sense of urgency in the air, a growing feeling that this wasn't just some random anomaly in space. Something more important was happening. And then, the message became clear. Through all the distortion and static, one phrase cut through like a blade. The Galactic Empire sets its sights on Earth. Prepare. The world fell silent. A cold chill swept through the air, and hearts skipped a beat. People who had been casually listening to the signal were now frozen, staring at their screens. What did it mean? What was this Galactic Empire? And why Earth? Governments around the world were quick to react. The United Nations held an emergency session, trying to piece together the meaning of the warning. But no one had answers. The best minds on Earth were in a state of confusion. No one had ever heard of this Galactic Empire, let alone imagined that Earth could be a target. At the same time, military forces went into high alert. Fighter jets scrambled into the skies. Satellites in orbit began scanning space, looking for any sign of the mysterious threat. But there was nothing. Just the endless expanse of stars and the lingering question, was Earth about to be attacked? The public began to panic. News channels were flooded with reports of the strange signal, and social media exploded with theories and speculation. Some believed it was a hoax, a prank from a group of hackers. Others feared it was the beginning of an alien invasion, something straight out of a science fiction novel. But one thing was clear. The message was real, and it had come from deep space. As the hours passed, Earth's leaders began to make decisions. Military forces were put on standby. NASA, along with international space agencies, coordinated with their best scientists to track any unusual activity in space. But nothing could be found. The signal was all they had. Back in the control rooms, technicians were working around the clock, trying to decode the entire message. What did the Galactic Empire want with Earth? Why had they chosen this moment to make their move? No answers were forthcoming. It seemed like the signal was a single cryptic warning, but to humanity, it felt like a countdown to something far worse. On the ground, people were divided. Some people were afraid, wondering if this was the end of humanity. Others were defiant, refusing to believe in a threat they couldn't see. But one thing was certain: the world would never be the same. In the days that followed, the signal repeated. Each time, it came with the same chilling message. The Galactic Empire sets its sights on Earth. Prepare. By now, the message had spread to every corner of the planet. Governments and military leaders were scrambling to understand what was happening, while citizens debated whether to panic or prepare. But still, no one knew where the signal had come from. No one knew who was behind it. And then, just as the world began to feel the weight of the warning, the signal stopped. It was as if the mysterious voice in the galaxy had disappeared. But the damage had already been done. The entire planet was on edge. The uncertainty was unbearable. Was the Galactic Empire real? Had the message been a warning or a threat? No one could say for sure. The world had never felt so vulnerable. In the midst of all the confusion and fear, one thing was certain. Earth was now aware of something far bigger than anything humanity had ever faced, something that had the power to destroy them all. And the countdown had already begun. As the world waited for the next move, people couldn't help but wonder, who were the Galactic Empire? And why had they set their sights on Earth? The stage was set. Earth's fate was hanging in the balance, and no one knew what would come next. This opening keeps the audience hooked by introducing an enigmatic, unexplained threat, while also raising key questions. It creates a feeling of suspense and mystery, setting the stage for the next parts of the story. The calm that had followed the sudden signal didn't last long. The days after the mysterious message from the unknown source only brought more confusion and fear. Governments around the world worked tirelessly, but no one could explain the origin of the Galactic Empire or what it truly meant for Earth. Yet, the silence from space was unsettling. It was as if the Galactic Empire was waiting for something. For Earth to react, for humanity to show some sign of strength or weakness. The message, simple yet ominous, had left a sense of dread hanging over the world. The Galactic Empire sets its sights on Earth. Prepare. Now, the Earth's top scientists and space experts had begun to dig deeper into the origins of the signal. Space agencies, led by NASA and their international counterparts, were working around the clock. The signal had come from the deepest regions of space. But where exactly? Could they trace it to a specific location? Could this empire really exist? Weeks passed, and though the mystery of the signal remained unsolved, humanity's curiosity grew. Experts began sifting through every piece of known galactic history, looking for any sign of something that could match the terrifying name, the Galactic Empire. What they found was more unsettling than anything they had imagined. The name Galactic Empire was no new discovery. In fact, the more they looked, the more they found ancient records and texts that hinted at a vast, powerful force that once existed long before Earth's time, before human civilization even began. But these texts weren't written by humans. They were old, ancient records from various species, long extinct. These species had written about a force that destroyed civilizations, wiped out entire star systems, and brought entire galaxies to their knees. It wasn't just a story or myth. It seemed to be the truth. What these ancient records described wasn't just any empire. It was a ruthless, unstoppable force, a highly advanced, militarized civilization that spanned entire galaxies, enslaving weaker civilizations and wiping out those who resisted. It was the stuff of legends, whispered about by the few surviving species that managed to avoid the Empire's wrath. The records spoke of a powerful fleet of ships, each one capable of devastating planets with ease. They mentioned warriors whose combat skills were unmatched, and leaders whose power was godlike. These were beings who saw themselves as rulers of the entire universe, and no one could stand in their way. The more the Earth's scientists and military experts researched, the clearer it became. The Galactic Empire was real. They had come to Earth. They had found humanity. For the first time, Earth's leaders began to realize that this was no random message. This wasn't just a warning. The Galactic Empire wasn't here to negotiate. It wasn't here to observe or make peaceful contact. They were here to conquer. The military, realizing the true nature of the threat, moved into action. Weapon systems that had been long retired were reactivated. Advanced space satellites and defense systems were put on high alert, scanning the skies for any signs of the Empire's fleet. Yet no ships appeared. The Empire had not yet arrived, but the threat was growing more real every day. News outlets across the world began reporting more frightening details. Entire civilizations, once thriving and advanced, had fallen to the might of the Galactic Empire. No warning, no mercy, just an unstoppable force marching forward, destroying everything in its path. The message that Earth had received was more than a mere statement. It was the beginning of something far more dangerous, a test of humanity's survival. Meanwhile, Earth's governments scrambled to unite, trying to form a collective defense against an enemy they could not understand. Diplomats and leaders from across the world spoke in hushed tones. There was no longer a question of if the Empire would attack, but when. Yet, despite all the research and the growing sense of fear, no one could understand why the Empire had chosen Earth. Earth wasn't the most advanced planet in the galaxy. Far from it. In fact, compared to the civilizations the Empire had destroyed in the past, humanity was still in its infancy. Why Earth? Why now? There were no answers, just more questions. In quiet corners of the world, conspiracy theorists started to speak up. Some believed the signal was a trap, a way to draw humanity into a fight that it couldn't possibly win. Others whispered about hidden powers that Earth had, powers that the Galactic Empire wanted for themselves. But these were just theories. Without proof, they couldn't be more than mere speculation. As the days turned into weeks, Earth's population began to feel the full weight of the Empire's threat. There were rumors of mysterious ships spotted on the outer edges of the solar system, but nothing concrete. Governments held emergency meetings, trying to prepare for a war they didn't know how to fight. The idea of a galactic war was almost impossible to comprehend. How could Earth, an insignificant planet in the vastness of space, stand a chance against an empire that had destroyed entire civilizations? Still, the truth was clear. The Galactic Empire had found Earth. It had marked it as its next target. And the rest of the galaxy, with all its secrets, could not help. In the meantime, the Empire waited. The signal had stopped, but the danger was far from over. As the world watched the skies, Earth's fate hung in the balance. Would humanity face the same fate as those who had fallen before them? Or would something rise up to challenge the Empire? The world held its breath, knowing one thing for sure. The greatest test of humanity's strength was about to begin. And it would start in the most unexpected way. The calm before the storm had been brief. In the weeks following the unsettling message from the Galactic Empire, Earth's leaders and military forces had scrambled to prepare for the worst. Despite their best efforts, the Empire's intentions remained unclear. Were they simply watching, waiting for Earth to make a move? Or had they already decided Earth's fate? Then, one quiet night, the sky suddenly lit up. A massive burst of light flooded the atmosphere, and Earth's peaceful existence was shattered. At first, no one knew what had happened. It started with a brilliant flash in the night sky, so bright that it seemed like a second sun had briefly appeared. Scientists, who had been tracking every possible movement in space, scrambled to identify the cause. Satellites pointed in every direction, but all they could see was darkness. Then, within moments, communication systems across the globe went down. Radio and television signals began to fade, and for the first time, the world was left in complete silence. The internet stopped working. Phones couldn't make calls, and no one could connect to the outside world. The whole planet seemed to go dark, as if the vast expanse of space itself had reached down and taken control of Earth's systems. Panic spread like wildfire. Cities around the world were filled with people looking up at the night sky, waiting for answers. What had caused the blackout? Was it a natural disaster, a massive technological failure? And then came the news. High-ranking military officials reported the first wave of destruction. Dozens of Earth's satellites had been completely obliterated by what appeared to be powerful energy blasts. They had no idea where the attack had come from or how it had happened. All they knew was that it wasn't a missile or a traditional weapon. It was something far more advanced. It didn't take long for humanity to realize that the Galactic Empire had made its move. The truth hit hard. What had started as a mysterious signal was now an undeniable threat. The Empire had arrived, not to warn, but to strike. And Earth, with all its military power, was utterly unprepared for the advanced technology the Empire wielded. Just hours after the first attack, massive ships appeared in Earth's orbit. They weren't the typical spaceships humans were used to seeing in science fiction movies. These ships were enormous, their surfaces gleaming with dark, metallic hues. They appeared to be made of a material stronger than anything Earth had ever seen, and they moved with a speed and precision that made the most advanced human spacecraft look like toys in comparison. The world's space agencies scrambled to make sense of the situation. Satellites and telescopes were trained on the ships, but they had no answers. These ships seemed to be made of a material beyond human understanding, and despite all of humanity's best technology, they couldn't even make a dent. At first, the ships hovered silently, as if waiting. No one knew what they were planning. Were they scanning Earth, studying it for a full-scale attack? Or was this just a demonstration of power? The uncertainty was unbearable. Then, without warning, the second wave of destruction came. More energy blasts, stronger, more intense, struck Earth's military bases, space stations, and key cities. In an instant, entire military fleets were disabled. The most powerful Earth-made weapons, from fighter jets to missile systems, were rendered useless against the Empire's advanced technology. The cities of the world began to burn. Fires raged across the globe as the attacks grew more concentrated. Governments declared martial law, but there was no command they could give that would change the outcome. The Galactic Empire had made it clear. Earth was not prepared to defend itself. In the chaos, Earth's leaders tried to organize a response, but even as they did, a new message from the Empire broke through the silence. It was a broadcast that was picked up on every television, radio, and communication device still functioning. The message was chilling in its simplicity. Surrender now, or face the full force of the Galactic Empire. You have no chance of survival. The voice was calm, almost mocking, as if the Empire were speaking to an inferior species. There was no threat of negotiation, no request for a treaty. The Empire was offering Earth only two choices: submit or perish. The world was in shock. Military leaders had no way to fight back. There was no defense, no shield to protect them. Earth had always been proud of its technological advancements, but now, standing before the might of the Galactic Empire, those advancements seemed like nothing more than toys. The Earth had become a helpless child in the face of a brutal and ancient conqueror. As the days passed, a sense of despair began to settle in. People tried to flee the cities, but transportation systems had been destroyed, leaving millions stranded. Governments debated whether to surrender, knowing it might be the only way to save millions of lives. At the same time, there were whispers of resistance. Some soldiers and civilians were determined to fight, even if it meant certain death. But the reality was grim. The Empire's technology was so advanced that no one knew how to combat it. The Galactic Empire had shown no mercy to the civilizations it had conquered before, and there was no reason to believe Earth would be any different. The planet stood on the brink of collapse, with no way of knowing what would come next. Would the Empire destroy everything in its path, or would there be a chance for Earth to survive? The sense of helplessness was overwhelming, and the world's fate hung in the balance. The Empire had taken the first step in its conquest of Earth, but what would happen next? As the fires burned and the sky remained dark, the people of Earth waited for the inevitable. The first attack had only been the beginning. The true horror of the Galactic Empire was still to come. Others, filled with desperation, began to organize. Small underground groups, made up of military personnel, civilians, and scientists, tried to gather what little knowledge they could on the Empire's technology. They studied their own weaponry, attempting to find weaknesses in the Empire's seemingly impenetrable defense systems. But the clock was ticking. Time was the one thing they no longer had. And then, just as quickly as it had arrived, the silence came again. The Empire's ships remained in orbit, waiting, watching. But there were no further attacks. No more broadcasts. Just the stillness of space and the cold realization that Earth was on the brink of destruction. The fate of humanity now rested in the hands of the few who dared to resist, who believed that the last hope was not yet lost. But with every passing second, Earth moved closer to its darkest hour. A decision had to be made. Would humanity fight, or would it surrender to the will of the Galactic Empire? The choice was simple, but the consequences were unimaginable. As the days wore on, the world continued to struggle under the oppressive weight of the Galactic Empire's presence. The Empire's ships hovered in Earth's orbit, silent and unmoving, like dark sentinels watching over a broken world. The air was thick with fear, the once vibrant cities now hushed under the constant threat of annihilation. The Earth's people were trapped between two impossible choices: surrender to the Empire or stand and fight, knowing that every attempt to resist might be futile. But there was something that the Empire had underestimated. Even in the face of certain destruction, the human spirit was not so easily broken. In the darkest moments, when it seemed like hope was lost, a flicker of defiance began to rise. It started small, a whisper, a plan, a single spark. And that spark began to spread. Around the world, small pockets of resistance began to form. Groups of soldiers, civilians, scientists, and former military leaders joined forces in secret. They knew that they could not defeat the Empire with brute force, but they believed that the Empire's arrogance would be its downfall. For all their advanced technology and overwhelming power, the Empire had underestimated the resilience and ingenuity of Earth's people. The first signs of organized resistance appeared in the underground bunkers and hidden laboratories across the globe. Scientists who had been working on advanced weaponry for years now turned their attention to the one thing that could give humanity a fighting chance: understanding the Empire's technology. The researchers studied the debris from the initial attacks, carefully analyzing every piece, every fragment of information they could gather. Every discovery was crucial, and every moment counted. In hidden rooms beneath the city, old soldiers and military tacticians gathered to devise a strategy. They knew that the Empire's fleets were virtually unstoppable, that the Empire's technology was light years ahead of anything Earth had ever seen. But there were weaknesses, small chinks in the Empire's armor. And it was those weaknesses that they had to exploit. In these secret meetings, Earth's best minds debated every possible tactic. Some argued for guerrilla warfare, others for sabotage. One thing was clear: whatever strategy they chose, it had to be clever, unexpected. They couldn't defeat the Empire by meeting its might head-on. It would have to be a war of wits, of patience, and of surprise. At the same time, news began to spread. Although most of Earth's communications were still down, those who managed to escape the burning cities brought word of the resistance forming. The message was simple, but powerful. We will fight. Together, we will stand. Together, we will not surrender. And the people listened. As the cities fell into ruin, the spirit of humanity began to shift. There were those who still believed in surrender, who thought that the Empire's power was too great to challenge. But for every person who thought it was over, there was another who believed in the impossible, who believed that Earth could find a way to survive. Slowly, more and more joined the ranks of the resistance, until it became clear that this wasn't just a small band of rebels. It was an organized force, a united front. In the shadows, a new leader emerged, a former military officer, now turned strategist, who had lost everything in the initial attacks. His name was Commander Alex Mercer. He wasn't a man of fancy speeches or grand gestures, but his determination was undeniable. He had lived through the worst of it, and he knew what needed to be done. Under his leadership, the resistance began to take shape. They trained, they planned, they prepared for what they knew was coming. Mercer's first task was to bring together the best minds on Earth. He recruited engineers, former military personnel, and scientists who had once worked on space programs and military defense systems. They all came with one common goal: to strike back at the Galactic Empire and give Earth a chance at survival. The scientists worked tirelessly to reverse engineer the technology they had acquired from the Empire's destroyed satellites. It was slow, frustrating work, but every piece of knowledge they gained was a step toward hope. They discovered how to temporarily disable some of the Empire's communication systems. They learned how to tap into the remnants of the Empire's network, listening in on their communications. It wasn't much, but it was enough to give them an edge. Meanwhile, Mercer's forces began to organize sabotage missions against the Empire's weak points. They attacked supply lines, took out minor outposts, and struck at random locations where they believed the Empire wasn't paying attention. It wasn't enough to make a real difference, but it sent a message. Earth wasn't going down without a fight. In the midst of these small victories, the resistance grew bolder. With every mission, their confidence grew. They weren't just reacting anymore, they were fighting back. They began to disrupt the Empire's operations, slowly eroding their control. Every victory, no matter how small, was a message to Earth's people that they could still fight, that they weren't alone. However, the Empire was watching. It wasn't long before their fleet took notice of these disturbances. The resistance, though small, had sparked something that the Empire could not ignore. The Galactic Empire was ruthless and efficient, and now, with the threat of a rising rebellion, they would make their move. Earth had drawn the Empire's attention. The stage was set. The resistance, though growing stronger every day, was still vastly outmatched. The Empire's ships in orbit were more than capable of wiping out entire cities with a single strike. Yet the resistance had something the Empire did not: humanity's will to survive, to fight for their future. And though they were outgunned and outmatched, they still had one thing that the Empire could never take away: their belief in freedom. The war was far from over. The resistance had just begun. And now it was a matter of time before they faced the Empire's wrath. But they would not go down without a fight. Not while there was still hope. Not while there was still time. The Galactic Empire had underestimated Earth. Despite their superior technology, despite their ruthless and overwhelming power, they had failed to account for one simple thing: the strength of humanity's will to survive. And now, that strength was rising. Commander Alex Mercer's resistance had grown from small, scattered cells into a formidable force. Though they had little in terms of resources, they made up for it with sheer determination. The underground bases where they operated had become hubs of activity, where humanity's best and brightest were working tirelessly on a plan to strike at the heart of the Empire. The Empire, however, was not idle. They had grown aware of the Resistance's efforts, and they had begun to tighten their grip on Earth. Their warships continued to patrol the skies, their energy weapons destroying entire cities, and their massive fleets hovered like vultures, watching for any sign of further defiance. Yet despite their efforts, the Resistance refused to relent. Days turned into weeks, and then weeks into months. The humans of Earth lived in a constant state of fear, but with each passing day, the Resistance's confidence grew. They had begun launching targeted attacks against the Empire's military infrastructure, blowing up supply depots, sabotaging weapon systems, and stealing technology. It was a war of attrition, but every small victory served as a reminder to the people of Earth that they could fight back. However, the cost was high. Cities were still falling. Thousands were dying every day, caught in the crossfire between Earth's desperate defense and the Empire's brutal attacks. The Galactic Empire's forces were relentless, and there was no way to completely halt their progress. But the Resistance had something that the Empire could not easily crush: hope. In the heart of one of Earth's last remaining strongholds, Mercer and his team gathered for a crucial meeting. They had spent weeks analyzing the Empire's technology, studying the warships in orbit, and developing a strategy to strike at the heart of the Empire's command. They had one chance, and they needed to make it count. "What we've learned so far is that their ships are nearly indestructible. One of the Resistance's top engineers, Dr. Eleanor Hayes, said as she leaned over a holographic display of an Empire warship. But they're not invulnerable. The key is their power source. It's heavily guarded, but if we can somehow disable it, we might be able to take down one of their ships for good. Mercer listened intently, his mind racing. The risk was immense, but the reward could be greater than anything they had achieved so far. If they succeeded, it would be the first real blow to the Empire, a symbol of humanity's resistance. But if they failed, the consequences would be catastrophic. They couldn't afford to make mistakes. "We need to move fast," Mercer said, his voice steady despite the pressure. "If we can disable one of their ships, it could give us the opening we need to take out more. We'll need to hit them hard, hit them fast, and then get out before they can retaliate." The plan was simple in its execution, but its complexity was overwhelming. The Resistance had no chance of matching the Empire's firepower. They were outnumbered and outgunned. Their only advantage was speed, surprise, and the element of unpredictability. As the team prepared for the mission, tension ran high. The Resistance knew they had one shot at this. There was no room for error. The warships above Earth were powerful, and their advanced weaponry could obliterate entire cities with the flick of a switch. The Resistance needed to strike before the Empire could respond. The operation began under the cover of night. A small fleet of Resistance ships, modest, hastily assembled, and armed with whatever Earth's engineers could salvage, made their way to the designated target, an enormous Empire warship that had been hovering above the Pacific Ocean for weeks. The ship was one of the Empire's most powerful, and if they could disable its power core, it would cause a chain reaction that could take down the entire fleet in orbit. Mercer and his team were ready. As the fleet neared the target, the anticipation was palpable. They knew they were about to enter the heart of the enemy's territory, where death awaited them at every turn. But they had no choice. Earth's survival depended on them. The mission began with a silent approach. The Resistance ships, cloaked by advanced stealth technology, slipped past the Empire's outer defenses undetected. Tension hung thick in the air as they neared the massive warship. The soldiers, equipped with high-tech armor and advanced weaponry, were ready to board. The plan was to infiltrate the ship, plant explosives on its power core, and then escape before the Empire could respond. As they made their way aboard the warship, the sound of their footsteps was muffled by the cold metal halls. They moved like shadows, careful not to alert the Empire's guards. The stakes were high, but they knew what had to be done. Every second counted. Then, disaster struck. An alarm blared. The stealth technology had failed. The Empire was aware of their presence, and the warship's defenses immediately went into lockdown. Resistance soldiers rushed to plant the explosives, but they were met with fierce resistance from the Empire's automated defenses. Gunfire echoed through the corridors as Mercer and his team fought desperately to complete their mission. "We're almost there," Mercer shouted over the comms as explosions rocked the ship. They were close. So close. But then the worst happened. A series of energy blasts ripped through the ship's hull, knocking several of the Resistance fighters off their feet. The blast doors slammed shut, and the escape routes were sealed. Time was running out. The explosives were set, but would they have enough time to get out? Mercer made a split-second decision. There was no turning back. He ordered his team to retreat to the nearest escape pod, leaving their comrades behind. The mission had to succeed, even if it meant sacrificing everything. The explosion came seconds later, a deafening blast that shook the very core of the warship. The Resistance had succeeded, but at a terrible cost. The warship, one of the Empire's most powerful vessels, was disabled. It fell into Earth's atmosphere, burning up upon entry. The Empire's fleet had taken its first major loss. But the victory came at a cost. The Empire would not tolerate this failure. They would retaliate. Earth's fight had only just begun. The victory that Earth's resistance had achieved was short-lived. The destruction of the Empire's warships sent shockwaves across their fleet, and their response was swift, brutal, and unforgiving. Earth's small but determined band of rebels had just delivered the first major blow to the Galactic Empire. However, it was now clear that they had awakened the Empire's fury. The war, it seemed, was about to escalate into something far more dangerous than anyone had anticipated. Days after the Resistance's successful strike, Earth was plunged into chaos once more. The Galactic Empire, known for its relentless pursuit of power, had wasted no time in retaliating. Their warships, once silent in orbit, now moved with terrifying speed. Massive fleets descended upon the Earth with unprecedented force, raining destruction down upon the planet. This was no longer an invasion. It was an extermination. Cities that had barely begun to rebuild after the initial attacks were now wiped off the map. The Empire had grown tired of waiting. They would show Earth no mercy. The once defiant humanity now found itself caught in an all-out war for its very survival. The Resistance, though emboldened by their victory, was now fighting for its life. They knew they could not match the Empire's might in a direct battle, but they had no choice. They had no time to retreat. They had to strike again. They had to keep the Empire's forces off balance long enough to find a way to turn the tide. Commander Mercer, standing in the midst of the chaos, knew that the time for small, calculated victories was over. This would be the fight for the future of humanity. There was no room for hesitation. The Empire was making it clear that if Earth didn't bow to their will, it would be destroyed. "We can't afford to sit back and wait for them to finish us off," Mercer said, his voice steady despite the gravity of the situation. "We fight. We fight until the last man, until the last woman, until the last breath. Earth will not fall today." Mercer's words spread quickly through the Resistance ranks. Despite the overwhelming odds, Earth's fighters gathered, determined to resist the Empire's overwhelming firepower. They didn't have the weapons or the ships to fight the Empire on equal terms, but they had something more, an unyielding will to survive. For every city destroyed, for every life lost, their resolve only hardened. The Resistance leaders convened, pulling together whatever resources they could find. The scientists worked day and night to develop new weapons, new technologies, anything that might give them an edge. The engineers worked tirelessly to modify Earth's remaining warships, retrofitting them with the stolen technologies from the Empire. It was a desperate hope, a gamble, but it was all they had. The largest strike force the Resistance had ever assembled was soon ready. It wasn't much, just a handful of modified Earth ships against the countless armadas of the Empire. But they were prepared to make a stand. The target was the heart of the Empire's operations, its command center in orbit around Earth. If they could destroy it, even the slightest chance of crippling the Empire's control over the planet would be theirs. The battle to reach the command center was nothing short of apocalyptic. The Resistance launched their assault with everything they had, hoping against hope that they could make it past the Empire's seemingly impenetrable defenses. As they engaged the Empire's fleet, explosions rocked the sky, sending shockwaves through the atmosphere. Resistance ships weaved through the Empire's assault, using speed and agility to evade the barrage of energy blasts. It was chaos, a war unlike any the Earth had ever known. The Empire, taken by surprise, was momentarily stunned. They hadn't expected the Resistance to launch such a bold attack so soon. Their forces scrambled to retaliate, deploying fleets of their own to counter the assault. But Mercer and his fighters pressed on, refusing to back down. Earth's ships fought with desperation and purpose, their crews risking everything to cripple the Empire's hold on the planet. But just as the Resistance began to gain ground, disaster struck. The Empire unleashed its full power, sending wave after wave of advanced fighters into the fray. The Resistance's numbers, though growing, were no match for the sheer scale of the Empire's forces. Ship after ship fell, and the odds grew slimmer with each passing minute. In the midst of the chaos, Mercer's flagship was struck, sending it careening toward Earth's atmosphere. The crew scrambled to stabilize the ship, but it was clear that the situation was dire. The command center, still within reach, was now a mere target for the Empire's retaliation. There was no way they could continue the attack if they didn't stop the Empire's counterstrike. As Mercer and his team made a final push toward the Empire's command center, the stakes reached their highest. The fate of Earth now rested on their ability to strike a decisive blow. They had no more time. The Empire was growing stronger, and their firepower was overwhelming. But even with their backs against the wall, the resistance continued to press on. There was something the Empire hadn't counted on: the Earth's will to fight. For all their power and technology, the Empire had failed to break humanity's spirit. In a final desperate move, Mercer ordered his team to launch a strike on the Empire's most powerful ship, a warship that had been responsible for much of the destruction. The plan was risky, but it was the only hope left. They had to take it down, no matter the cost. The strike was sudden, a bold, unexpected move. The explosion that followed was massive. The warship, a symbol of the Empire's dominance, was disabled in a fiery blast. The resistance had struck at the very heart of the Empire's control. But the Empire's response was swift. They launched a full-scale counterattack, their ships firing relentlessly at the remaining resistance forces. The resistance, however, had given everything they had. The damage was done. The Empire's grip on Earth was weakening. Humanity had taken the first step toward victory, even if it cost them dearly. As Earth's skies darkened with the aftermath of the battle, one thing was clear: this war was far from over. The Empire would retaliate, and humanity would need to fight even harder to survive. The road ahead was uncertain, but the resistance had proven that even the most powerful empire in the galaxy could be challenged. And in the heart of Earth's resistance, Commander Alex Mercer stood tall, knowing that the fight had only just begun. The future of humanity depended on their next move. But one thing was certain: Earth would not fall without a fight.